Today is another what sold fast video, and by fast we mean the 100% sell-through rate rule, which is it's sold within 90 days of being listed. So a few things before we get into the numbers and the items here. First, I like to say that when I give you guys the numbers, I'm giving you what they paid for the item. I'm not including shipping, tax, or anything like that they paid. We're just talking about what they actually paid for the item. And then when I break down what the profit was after, so we have the gross profit, right? Gross profit being just what they paid. We're going to take out the fees. And I actually decided I think I'm going to leave out shipping because that really changes per person per order. So we're going to leave out shipping. There's no point sharing that. So it's going to be the fees I paid plus the cost of goods. That will be how we get our profit. Keep in mind, the math's not going to math, okay? Because I'm not giving you guys all the exacts with the shipping and the discounts and all those things. So I'm going to give you what they paid minus their shipping, what it cost me in fees and cost of goods, and then the profit thereafter is what I'm going to give you. So just explaining how that's going to work. Now here's another interesting thing before we get started. February was a very rough month for me. I don't know what happened. eBay went dead on me. I feel like Poshmark did too, but Poshmark's not my main selling platform, so if things go dead over there, I don't think twice about it. But eBay went dead on me. I mean dead. It was pretty much crickets for 2 weeks, which is strange. That doesn't happen to me. And based on what I see here, I mean, I know we could say like, well, it's the items you're picking up, yada, 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 but the stats here are telling me that I'm picking up good items, okay? I color code everything based on how long it took to sell. This is telling me that that wasn't the problem. So I think there was something glitch-wise within eBay. I genuinely think that. Nothing was making sense. Nothing. With that being said, obviously there was like a whole 2 weeks of me not getting sales, which was really rough for me. And it sent me into panic mode. So I then did a huge sale where I was letting go of things for a lot of money, which you'll see that reflected in this. Yeah, keep that in mind when you're hearing these numbers. Things were selling for pretty darn cheap this month because I needed to get eBay in gear. Luckily enough, after I did that, it was like my store came back to life and I was getting very normal sales again. So, you know, it was a rough month for me this month, but hey, we still came out pretty good. Matter of fact, yes, this is interesting. It was still one of my top performing months gross overall. So keep that in mind, but okay, that's enough rambling. Let's get into the stats or the item. Okay, so the very first item we're going to talk about was a Tori Richards Hawaiian shirt for men. It was an extra large. And I've honestly never seen this brand before, but I know that when it's Hawaiian stuff, it's always worth looking up. The comps look promising and it ends up it was. So this item sold in 1 day. Only took 1 day to get this out the door for $25. So a nice little bread and butter item. And the cost of goods for this one shirt was $4.99. And the fees were $4.37. This brought my profit after everything was done to $17.27. Next was a Lauren Ralph Lauren faux wrap midi dress. It was a size 16W, which is a great size. It had this really cute medallion type accent right in the middle of it. Had long sleeves. These are all things that work in my favor. So we have midi, long sleeves, and kind of like an ornate accent to it. All black. We all know that those things that are more basic and can be kind of like a capsule wardrobe, blacks and, you know, some of those kind of colors, more neutral colors, they do well. That's another plus to this item. Yeah, I sold this in 14 days. So it took 2 weeks from the time that I listed it for $26. And the cost of goods for me was $4.99. The fees were actually $7.28. The reason being, you'll see my fees are higher this month, and that's because I'm trying to experiment with promoted listings. In the past, it hasn't worked great for me, but I've tried some things after hearing other people talk about it, and here we are. It kind of is working. I'm going to keep trying to work with promoted listings, not on everything. If it's something that has like a 100% sell-through rate, like fast, like certain Lily Pulitzer items, we got Peter Millar, you know, things like that where I'm like, it doesn't need help to sell. Those ones I'm not really going to put fees on. But some of these items where I'm just not sure about it, or maybe the sell-through rate isn't the greatest, but it's still good items, or maybe it's bread and butter items that don't move the fastest, I'm going to use my fees on that, or promoted listings on that. With that being said, I guess I'll tell you what they were separate. It was $5.27 for the transaction fees, and then or seller fees. I always call it transaction fees. And then the Promo fees were $2.01. That brought us to $7.28 in fees. That brought my net profit to $18.61 for this dress. Okay, next was these Athleta Brooklyn ankle pant. They were a size 10 tall. They were super lightweight. I can't remember if part of the description of it was featherweight or if that's just a keyword I used, to be honest. It is UPF protective, so I did include that. And then I included like athleisure. It was an olive color, so I put that in the listing. With all of that being said, I think that one, Athleta still sells for me as a brand in general. That's not the main reason though. You do have to make stylistic choices with Athleta. I think that it was because it was a size tall. And a size 10 isn't a horrible size, so I think there was that. I think those were the major things. Now coming into spring, things like UPF protection, lightweight things, those do matter. So I think it was just, it really was a combination of all the keywords. Now I could have held onto this for more money, for sure. I did see more going, I've seen comps that sold for more around the same type of size and everything like that, but this exact pant. But 12 days in and out, and it still was me getting my money back because they offered $25. I took it. I had paid $4.99 for the pants, and transaction fees were $4.50. This left me with a profit of $17.11 for the item. So I just went ahead and let it go. I thought that that was a good enough turnaround. Like I said before in my last video, Athleta sells anywhere from probably, yeah, like the 25 to 40-ish range. So this is at the bare minimum of the range that I'm okay with. So I'll let it go. Okay, next is an Eddie Bauer item. And it was an Eddie Bauer First Ascent Premium Goose Down quilted jacket. And on the inside of it, it did say it was an EB800. It was women's and it was extra large. So all of that being said, First Ascent is always an Eddie Bauer line that I'm going to look up. There is a lot of value found in those items, in my opinion. I think that that was the major thing going for it. And then on top of that, the fact that it was goose down and the specific model EB800, those are all things that got this sold. Not to mention an extra large is a desired size in women's clothing. So I think that it was all of those factors going for it. And I sold this right as we were transitioning from winter sales into seeing those spring sales come in. This sold in one day. This Eddie Bauer jacket sold in one day for $42, and I had paid $7.99 for it, and the transaction fees were $6.74. This left me with a profit of $28.90 on this item specifically. So always look at those Eddie Bauer First Ascent items. Fall, winter, spring, summer, look it up. It's worth looking up. Okay, the next item actually sold in a lot of 2 on eBay. One item was not within that 90-day turnover, but this item was. So out of the lot, this was the one that was a turnover like that. This also made like the shipping pretty cheap, all those kind of things. So keep that in mind when I'm giving you these numbers. If you're curious what I mean by the other item, it was a J. Jill top. It was a love linen top, and I had that item for 247 days. So it really was not a good turnaround on that item. So the Land's End item was a really cool piece. Okay. It was a collaboration. It was Land's End x Blake Shelton. So I knew to look it up because 1, people love Blake Shelton. 2, it was a collab. We all know, always look up collabs. If you don't know, now you know. And it was flannel. These are all things that are going for it. It was something called Oyiko Tex. I'm not familiar on what that is. That's something I should probably learn about when it comes to Land's End. But it was extra large plaid. You know, once again, these are all things going for it. The biggest thing, in fact, in my opinion, was that it's a Land's End collab with Blake Shelton, followed by all those other factors, which is like extra large, all those things I named. It turned around and sold in 6 hours. So I listed that, somebody allotted the 2 items and purchased them. And they paid $29 for this Land's End Blake Shelton shirt, and my cost of goods was only $2 on it. And my transaction fees were $4.92. And after the obviously keep in mind the shipping was lower because they had lotted up the item. My profit was $25.72. So that was a really great item to pick up. I don't know how often I'll find that, considering it's a very specific sounding collab. This next item was an Adrian Vidadini 100% 2-ply cashmere sweater, and it was a size large for women's. With this item, Adrian Vidadini is not a bad brand, but it's not one that goes fast in my opinion, in my experience. I think it was the fact that it was the 100% two-ply cashmere, and I was coming on the tail end of the season for cashmere, but I think that's what really pulled this sale through for me. I watched too much Kaylee Lane. I just found that's exactly what she would say, pull through. So yeah, I think that's what did it for this item. It was super soft. It was this beautiful blue color. There was a lot going for it in my opinion, but that's definitely what put it through was the two-ply cashmere that's highly desired. It sold in 12 hours from listing for $30. So obviously, like I said, that's desirable. The cost of goods was $4.99 and my fees were $4.83. And I came home with a profit of $21.81 on that very, very quick flip. Okay, so this next item is one that by this point everybody pretty much knows about it, except for my sister apparently. I taught her to resell if you don't know. Talked about that last video, and she passed up Faherty because she didn't like the price that they were selling it for. So yeah, we had to have a conversation about that. It was a Faherty button-down Oxford shirt for men. It was a size long, and it was plaid, long sleeve. With this one, I don't think the details beyond the brand matters that much. It's a high turnaround item. Along with everyone else, mine sold pretty fast. This is a highly desired item. It sold in one day. The person paid $39.99 for it. I had only paid $2.50 for it. The transaction fees were $6.31. My profit that I took home was $32.70 on that item. Next, we have a Ted Baker item, and believe it or not, this was, I can't say my very first Ted Baker. It was my first Ted Baker finding it out in the wild. Let's see here. What was it? It was a Ted Baker. It was just a pullover sweater, but it was a merino. Was it merino wool blend? It was definitely a wool blend. Also, it was a size 5, which in Ted Baker sizing, that is an extra large. It was this beautiful deep purple. So I think 1, it was Ted Baker. 2, it was wool. 3 was a nice size. And the color was really nice. So I think that's what all got this to sell so fast. It sold in 5 days for $30. I paid $3 for it, which is really nice, and my fees were $5.07, which left me with a profit of $23.41. This next one was a beautiful sale. I was in love with this one. I was at the thrift store and I seen this beautiful formal dress, very much giving wedding vibes, whether that's a bridesmaid or a mother of the bride or whatever. It just very much gave like that kind of vibe. And it was an Adriana Papel formal dress. It was floor length and it was a size 22W, which is a great size. Interestingly enough, there were other ones of this exact model listed on eBay, but theirs were not moving, which is weird to me. I think one had sold maybe. I chose different wording from those other listings, and I think that's what really helped here. One, I think formal Adriana Papel is something that is desired anyways. I'm pretty sure. It's not one that I find often. I do find a lot of Adriana Papel more casual clothing, but I believe their formal wear is highly desired. Don't quote me though. And beyond that, the size. Obviously the size was great, but that's not what put other people's items through. So I think for me it was the way I chose to word it and the way I took photos. So I used ruche, sheer, embellished, wedding, those kind of things. So it sold for me in 32 days. So that was a good turnaround for formal wear for $65, which is amazing. I had only paid $4.99 for it. And let's see here, I did have a promotion fee as well as my regular seller fees. The seller fees were $9.66. The promo fees were $3.79, which brought my fees to $13.45, which is quite a bit. I'm happy with that sale. Okay, next was an item that was free to me. So hey, can't be mad at that. This item was a Hot Topic maxi dress, and it had a lace like skirt. So it was like a short solid dress underneath, and then it had a long to the ground maxi skirt sewn onto it, making it a full length dress. And the lace had skulls like in the shape, like the lace, the pattern of how it was knitted was like skull pattern. That took a lot for me to say. It was new with tags, but I said new with defect because somebody had gotten deodorant on it. There was deodorant on it from somebody trying it on. So I did notate that, and I didn't notice it until I was getting ready to list it. I really didn't want to go through the process of cleaning it, taking the tag off, obviously. I think that one, it having new with tags was part of why it had interest, but also I think the skull detail is another big thing. And then I used specific keywords like witchy, whimsigoth, gothic, and it's even like a slightly boho vibe, very slightly. That might have been a stretch to use that keyword, but these are keywords I used. And it sold in 14 days for $20. So $0 turned into 20 on an item with deodorant armpit stains, which obviously can be washed off, so whatever about that. The fees were $4.26, and like I said, I paid $0, so my profit after I had shipped it and everything was pretty much even to what they had paid, which was $20.42. Next is, it's an interesting item that I had not came across yet. I'm very aware of the brand Hatch. If you don't know, Hatch is a really great maternity brand that you always want to look up. There are some pieces that won't sell great, but there are some pieces that will sell awesome with Hatch. Now, Hatch has a diffused line called the Nines by Hatch, and I found a dress, and I was like, the comps looked horrible, not gonna lie. The comps looked absolutely horrible. But I was like, if you word this right, people are gonna know it's a brand associated with Hatch. And also, I think it had enough going for it that somebody would want this. It was beautiful. And honestly, even though it was a maternity dress, if it was in my size, I would have kept it. And with all of this being said, it was a size small, which is hard to sell. If you sell on eBay, you know that smalls can be kind of hard to sell if they're not like designer brands or certain desirable brands. It had this very cottagecore vibe to it. It was very feminine and romantic with these like it had a smocked chest, and then it had like these puff sleeves with a floral pattern, a beautiful soft purple color. It had a lot going for it. It was a beautiful dress. You could probably use it for maternity shoot or just to be cute and comfy during your pregnancy. It sold in 9 days, and I just took an offer of $18. Considering the comps didn't look great, I knew that there was a chance it wouldn't go for high dollars, but for a size small and not great comps, I'll take $18. I had paid $4.99 for it, and fees were $3.61. So my profit was $11. Next, we have a J. Jill item. Now, I've told you in the last video, J. Jill is what I'm being a little more picky about picking up. I do have a ton of it in my store because for a long time it was moving so great. Now it's not so great. I found this really cool, thick, solid, very quality made cardigan sweater that was reversible. So on one side it was gray and on one side it was blue, and it was very soft. It was a very nice piece. We're gonna use that word substantial here. Okay, it was a substantial piece. I sold it in 7 days for 31 cents. No, not cents, $31. 7 days for $31. And I had found it in the store for $4.99. The fees for selling it were $5.46. The promo fees were $2.09. This brought my fee total to $7.55, and I made a profit of $22.34. Okay, next is a new to me brand. I was not aware of it, and then somebody also let me know that there are more than one line of this brand. This was a diffused line of it, but a brand that you should be aware of is Magashoni. So once again, I don't know if I'm saying it right. That's clearly not an American word. But Magashoni is a really good brand that makes quality items, and they have some diffused line. You can get just Magashoni. You can get M by Magashoni. You can get Magashoni New York. You can get Magashoni for men or menswear, however they say it. There's several lines. So Magashoni, I think, is their main quality line. There might be a few, like, you know, every brand kind of has those subtitles that make them worth more than even their regular brand. But this was M by Magashoni, which isn't worth as much. Now, when I listed this, I did not know that. I thought the M was just like a logo. And I listed it without saying M by Magashoni. The tag was there, so whoever bought it was aware. But hey, it still sold pretty fast. And interestingly enough, this was a flawed item. It had it's cashmere. Let me state that. It was a cashmere cardigan sweater. It was a size extra large. It was a women's. I used words like quiet luxury, login look, which was a little bit of a stretch, but it did have that kind of, a little bit of that loose boxy look. And I also said boho because this does fit in the boho category. But it did have a hole in the cashmere in the armpit, which I didn't notice till I got home once again. And I still listed it. Okay, yeah, so armpit in the hole in the armpit. It sold in 20 days for $35. I think it's obvious why it sold. One, cashmere, two, the brand. But so 20 days, $35, and I had paid $4.99 for it. My fees were $5. Promotional fee on top of regular fees was $2.29. That brought my fees to $7.29. My profit at the end of the day was $23.42. Okay, so next is a vintage item, and it's the brand Corette, which I think I've picked up 2 and sold 2, I think. So I don't know if it's that brand in general. I probably should look into this brand and see if it's a good brand, or maybe it's just good items from this brand. It was a very much granny core sweater, which we know is the craze these days with the young ones. It had a pearl button, like an ornate pearl button to the button up of it. It was a knit. It was a cardigan technically. And it was a large petite, which I feel like a petite does affect sells in a negative way sometimes. And it was embroidered with these cute little blue and, was it a purple or a dark blue? There was definitely regular blue, and then I can't remember if the other color was a dark blue or a purple. It was a little bit of both. But it had a lot of factors going for it. Granny core is the main thing. The young folks want the granny core, and it was a really quality piece. I sold it in 76 days for $25.44. I had paid $2 for it, so not a ton invested there. The seller fees were $4.49, and the promotional fees were $1.70. That brought my fees to $16.19. So I made $18.90 after the sale. Okay, so next was something that the comps were doing great for this brand in cashmere. It was a Banana Republic pullover sweater for men, and it had, like, I think it was a quarter zip, 100% cashmere, solid navy blue for men. What was going for this was just the specific combination of desire, which was for cashmere pullovers with a quarter zip from Banana Republic. Simply put, that's why it sold within the 90-day time frame. And it sold in 73 days for $24. I paid $4.99 for it. My fees were $5.45 for seller fees, and I did pay promotional fees as well of $2.08, which made my fees $7.53 total. But my profit was $19.16. Okay, next was one I knew was going to sell fast, and I'm a little surprised how fast, but I knew it would do well because it was just a beautiful piece. It was a J. Crew dress. It was smocked, which is a very desirable detail. It was a size 12, which isn't a horrible size. It's a pretty decent size. It was very much cottage-core and romantic. I also used the term fairy as a keyword because that is something that is desired. And I felt like that fit within that aesthetic. So those are the words I used, and I think that what sold it was not just J. Crew. J. Crew is desirable for certain pieces, but I think it was the fact that it was this very romantic, fairy tale, ruffly, cottagecore dress. So all those keywords are definitely what pushed for the sale to happen. It sold in 7 days for $30.60. I paid $4.99 for it. My fees were $5.60. My profit after I paid everything in fees and costs of goods was $23.31. Okay, next we have one where if you pick it up, sometimes like the business attire items can do well, and that's what this was. It is a Casper tailored melange sheath dress. That was the whole name. Casper tailored melange sheath dress is the actual title for this item. And it was a size 14, which is a great size. And it was just a very basic business dress for those people that have to wear a business attire to work. And it is sleeveless, which makes it great for like throwing any kind of blazer or sweater over it. It was back slip, which is a detail that I don't know if many look for it, but I feel like it's one that I look for and think is worth noting, so I did. I sold in 41 days for $28, and it cost me $4.99, and the fees were $5.09 for the seller fees, and then I did have a promotional fee of $1.94, making my fees $7.03. My profit at the end was $20.60. Okay, next we have another run-of-the-mill, always, well, I can't say always selling because I know it's hit or miss right now, but it's a Peter Millar pullover. Now this one specifically was the melange. Did we have two melange back there? Yeah, I need to look up what that word actually means. I don't even know what it means. I'm gonna look it up because clearly it has some importance. But Peter Millar Melange Golf Performance Pullover. It was a size extra large, which is great. It was a beautiful, beautiful purple, which is great for the spring season. It has the quarter zip, which is something that does matter for this brand. So I think that it was just a matter of me finding the right piece. It was the Golf Performance Melange 1/4 zip pullover. That's something that seems to do well for Peter Millar, because if you are or are not aware, Peter Millar seems to be getting a little bit of hit or miss on what items are going to sell. It's not one that I find often, to be honest, so I don't worry about it too much as far as keeping up with its trends. I just look it up when I find it. Anyways, it sold in 6 days for $38, and I paid $3.99 for it. My fees were $6.06. My profit was $30.46. Next, we have a Title IX dress. I found two very similar. Hopefully the other one sells soon for around the same amount. Now, the great thing about Title IX is it can move even in smaller sizes, which is great. So this was a Title IX Dream V-neck dress. That is the name of the actual dress. And it comes with this really cool feature called a swift snap. And the swift snap is basically like, it's a snap, kind of like on when you think of like onesies where, you know, it's like a snap closure in that way. They have it at the bottom of the hem of the dress, so it can turn your dress into shorts at any given moment for you to do more active activities, which is great. I think it's a really cool feature, and I'm not sure why more companies aren't jumping on that trend. But it was a size small, which is why it went for the amount it went for. And I think that this one sold because it was a more desirable version of their dresses, and it sold in 4 days for $34. I had paid $5.99 for it. My fees were $5.60. I made a profit of $23.79 on this dress. Okay, so those were the eBay sales. Now let's move on to the Poshmark. There were way less Poshmark. We have a Ralph Lauren item, and it was a women's button-up shirt. It did have a really nice crested logo, which I think is what really pushed for the sale to happen, because people do look for items that have the obvious logo on them. So it had a nice crescent style logo. It was a broadcloth blouse. I think that's really what did it, was just the crested logo on a Ralph Lauren button up for women. I think that's why it sold. It took 58 days to sell for $32. And because it was discounted to them, I did have to pay $2.02 for shipping. The fees were $6.40, so I made a profit of $19.08 on this item. So next is a brand that I've heard people say does not sell well. I find really interesting pieces by them, so I'm going to test out that theory. And it's an Anthropologie brand called Moth, M-O-T-H. And this piece, I didn't even know what it was when I was going through the racks. I just seen the design and knew that the design was going to be a hit. It had these beautiful, really interesting stripes, and the colors is what made it interesting. I think it had these stripes, horizontal stripes on it, and then in the pockets and on the inner lining was a blue and white polka dot design, and it really stood out. It was a very standout piece. So I think that's really what sold it, was the style more than it being Moth or Anthropologie. It sold in 8 days for $40 on Poshmark, which is absolutely wonderful. I paid $6.99 for it. My fees were $8, so I made a profit of $22.99. Okay, next we're moving to a brand new with tags, actually branded Friends TV show sweatshirt. It was specifically the routine sweatshirt. It had a faceless art version of Monica and Ross on the front of it. I seen a listing that called this rare, and I was like, I'm gonna piggyback that and call it rare. I don't know if it actually is, but enough of that worked, I guess. I don't think anything in specifically made this sale, not even the word rare. I think it's just because people like Friends, and it was a really nice sweatshirt. I almost considered keeping it. The person in 11 days of listing paid me $25 for it. I had paid $4.99 for it in the store. My fees were $5, so I made $12.99 on that sale. Okay, so next is a fickle, very fickle brand that I feel like nobody can exactly quite figure out. It's just some items sell and some don't. If you know somebody who has figured out the key to this brand, let me know. But it's Eloquii. It was an Eloquii scuba dress. That's the silhouette. It's a scuba silhouette. And I think what really pulled this sale through was, one, it was new with tags. 2, was a size 24. But 3, it had this beautiful pearl accent across the entire top of it. And it was a very elegant piece, and I did use that as a keyword. So I think that's what happened. It was brand new with tags. Eloquii is an expensive brand if you're not aware. Items can go for, I have a few of their pieces. Let's see. On the low end, we're talking like $90, and on the high end, we're talking about maybe $300, maybe $400, which is interesting to me because I don't think they use specific quality materials and all those things, but they do specialize in plus size. And with branding and those two things, I think that's why they can charge so much for the clothes. It is a desired brand, but reselling it is not an easy task to navigate. Nonetheless, it's sold in 38 days for $50 on Poshmark. I had paid $4.99 for it. The transaction fees were $10, so my net profit was $35.01. Those were the items I was sharing with you in this video. That's probably super long. And if you want to check out my last video on what sold with the same 100% sell-through rate for the month before, go ahead and check that video out. And I don't know when I'll have another video for you, but I'll try. All right.